Good afternoon and welcome to Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference. My name is Helen Miller with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA, and I will be moderating the Asset Management for Public Water Systems session. Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference has offered 24 sessions over 2 weeks, and today our focus has been on Ohio EPA's Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. This is our last and final session of our conference. Before we get started, we'd like to direct your attention to one of today's environmental fun facts. On this slide, we're highlighting, how can I learn more about what is in my drinking water? Public systems are required to monitor their water regularly for contaminants. When a system doesn't meet a standard, consumers are notified. Each year, community public water systems must distribute a consumer confidence report to all bill-paying customers by July 1st to let customers know what the quality of their water is. Ohio EPA also publishes an interactive drinking water advisory map to provide additional information about your drinking water. You can scan the QR code on this slide to get more information about your drinking water. Our presenter today is Sean Stevenson in our Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. Sean works as an Environmental Specialist 3 and is currently the Capability Assurance Coordinator and helps to oversee the Division of Drinking and Groundwater's Asset Management Program. He's been with Ohio EPA since 2014 and graduated from Ohio University with a bachelor's degree in biological sciences. We also have Jill Schieffer behind the scenes answering questions. And now I'm turning the microphone over to Sean.
Thank you, Helen, and good afternoon to everyone joining today's webinar. So we'll go ahead and get started. So during today's presentation, I am going to discuss asset management for public water systems, some benefits of asset management, provide an overview of the asset management requirements here in Ohio, and lastly provide some information on available technical assistance, templates, and guidance that is available by Ohio EPA. So to start, what is asset management? Asset management has a lot of different definitions and can look different based on the size and type of public water system. A definition I like from US EPA is maintaining a desired level of service for what you want your assets to provide at the lowest lifecycle cost. In other words, making sure you can provide a safe and reliable source of drinking water at the lowest cost to your customer. Asset management is a continuous process, and all public water systems already do some or all parts of an asset management program. The program itself allows the water system to bring data together to make informed decisions about current and future operations. When developing and implementing an asset management program, it's important to rely on what is already known about the assets. So use any resources that already exist at your water system and use the knowledge from the entire workforce. So asset management is often viewed as having 5 core components. This includes the current state of each asset, the level of service, meaning how will your water system operate and maintain its asset to meet customer and regulatory expectations, the criticality of those assets, meaning how important is that asset to the operation of my system and what is its probability of failure, life cycle cost, how much will that asset cost over its lifetime, and a long-term funding strategy. How will we pay for capital improvements, maintenance, future staffing needs, etc. And so when Ohio was developing the asset management rules, they were developed around these 5 core concepts of asset management. I also wanted to mention that asset management program development and implementation is truly a team effort and can help communicate needs of the system to the entire organization and its customers. So the asset management team should consist of the decision-making body or governing board, fiscal officer, operators, maintenance personnel, and the list really goes on. But it's important to include a wide range of water system personnel in the asset management program team. And before I go into details about Ohio's asset management requirements, I wanted to discuss some benefits of asset management. An asset management program can help engage upper management. It allows for more planned and less reactionary operation, which results in a more sustainable water system. It ensures support of ratepayers. The goal is to understand the actual cost to produce water and charge and set rates based off that actual cost. And it helps make sound financial decisions and allows for money to be saved over time for future needs, since you know what you'll need. Okay, so now before I get any further, we're going to do our first poll question. The first poll question is, what is your role at your public water system? Are you an operator, decision maker, consultant, or other?
Okay, and I'm launching the poll, so go ahead and make your selection. And also as a reminder, you do have a copy of the PowerPoint PDF in your handouts. I mentioned that earlier, but I know some people log on at the last minute. And also to answer polls, if you maximize your screen, that should make it easier to respond to the poll. Looks like a lot of people have already responded. I will be closing the poll soon, so go ahead and make your final selection. Okay, and I'm closing the poll and sharing the results. Back to you, Sean.
So it looks like we have a wide range here of folks. So about 25% operators, 23% decision makers, about 6% consultants, and then 45 other. Everyone involved with the operation of a water system plays a really important role in asset management. So throughout this presentation, try and think of how your role can assist with the development and or implementation of an asset management program. Okay, so Ohio's asset management program rules can be found in the Ohio Administrative Code 3745-87-01 through 05. The rules went into effect in October of 2018, so they're still fairly new. The rules require that all public water systems have an asset management program in place. The rules also specify the minimum contents of an asset management program and the requirements for long-term implementation. Asset management programs will vary in detail and size, but the minimum contents established in the rule must be included in the asset management program if they apply to your system. Today, we're going to focus on 8703, which is the minimum contents of the asset management program, and 8705, which is that long-term implementation section of the rule. As mentioned, asset management is required for all public water systems. So I always like to give an overview of the types of public water systems here in Ohio. And there are three main types. First, a community public water system, which has year-round residential customers. Examples would include towns, mobile home parks, rural water districts, and subdivisions. Next would be a transient non-community public water system, which has different non-residential customers daily. Examples would include motels, parks, airports, and campgrounds. And then the non-transient, non-community public water system has the same non-residential customers daily. And this would include things like schools, daycare facilities, industrial or manufacturing facilities. And so Ohio has approximately 4,200 public water systems. And the breakdown is around 2,600 transient non-community systems, around 1,100 community systems, and then around 580 to 600 non-transient non-community systems. So back to the rule. The asset management rule, specifically 8703, lists the minimum contents of an asset management program. And it's broken down into three distinct but interrelated areas, and that is managerial, technical, and financial. The managerial section of the rule has requirements around ownership accountability, staffing, organizational policy, and on developing effective external linkages. The technical section is the core of the asset management program and has requirements around asset inventory, future infrastructure planning, and focuses on documenting and developing the technical knowledge needed to operate, maintain, and upgrade the system. And then the financial section of the rule works to ensure systems have revenue sufficiency and fiscal management and controls in place to support the water system and its capital improvement plan. So first is the managerial section of the rule, which is meant to address the public water system's organizational structure and provide the support and guidance to operate and maintain the public water system. One of the first things required in an asset management program is to identify the owner of the system, which is the person or entity with the legal rights to make decisions on the construction, operation, and maintenance of the system. By including this information, contractors, Ohio EPA, and customers will know who to address when there are questions or concerns. This could be documentation already in place or a statement that the person with ownership accountability understands their responsibilities. The owner will need to demonstrate that they have committed to proper operation and maintenance of the water system. This can be done by demonstrating that maintenance is occurring, assets are replaced prior to failure, and the CIP is moving forward. The other items that must be included under the managerial section of the rule include a non-technical description of the water system. This would include information regarding the number of service connections, number of customers, the source type, etc. And then succession planning for critical personnel. So who's going to replace the operator? Is the operator's knowledge being recorded for the next operator to be able to take over? And then a clearly defined organizational chart with job descriptions, including duties and responsibilities. Any details on properly certified operators and minimum staffing requirements. Ability to address violations. Who has that authority within the organization? Written procedures on contracting and purchasing. This would be both for emergency and non-emergency situations. And then written procedures on security and use of system equipment. And this can help with, consistency in similar situations on how they're handled and during hiring and retirements. And then any billing practices and or revenue collection policies, if applicable to your public water system, would also need to be included within the asset management program. Then next is the technical section of the rule. This is the larger portion of an asset management program. So I'm going to go over each of these in more detail. But the technical section of the rule requires that the asset management program would include a schematic or map of the treatment and distribution, an asset inventory, an evaluation of all assets, an operation and maintenance program, emergency preparedness and contingency planning, an annual review of the system source water assessment, capacity projections, a criteria and timeline for infrastructure rehabilitation and or replacement, and then finally that capital improvement plan. So now I'll discuss each of those in some more detail, starting with a schematic or a map of the public water system's treatment and distribution. This can vary in detail. It's dependent on your system. For example, a treatment schematic could be as simple as a hand drawing showing each component, or it could be more detailed, such as having as-built for treatment and GIS for distribution. The public water system map, at minimum, per the rule, must include the source, storage, treatment, and the distribution system, including hydrants and valves. Next is an asset inventory. First, the inventory should work for your water system and should be a balance between the amount of data collected and the time or cost needed to develop the inventory. It should also be developed in a way that is easy to update, because it really should be updated continuously as assets are taken out of service or brought into service. The rule defines that each asset must have a unique identifier, its age, its status, and location. and all that would have to be included in the inventory for each asset. So as part of inventory development, each asset needs to be evaluated. The evaluation includes determining the condition of each asset, which is often a number assigned. So for example, one being very bad condition and it needs to be replaced or requires maintenance often, to a 5, which may be defined as like new or requiring little to no maintenance on a regular basis. So you'd want to assign a value based off the condition to each asset. And when determining the condition, consider the history of maintenance and repair as well. The evaluation also includes calculating the estimated remaining useful life based on the condition and performance. Once the condition is determined, assets can then be prioritized on their criticality and condition assessment. This evaluation of assets is what allows systems to establish their criteria and timeline for infrastructure repair and replacement, and with the development of a capital improvement plan. So I mentioned that assets can be prioritized based on their condition and criticality, but what is criticality? Criticality considers the asset's probability of failure versus its consequence of failure. It takes into account the evaluation of the asset and how important or critical it is to the operation of the system. So an asset that is critical for the operation of the system that is in poor condition would be in the upper right-hand quadrant as a high-risk asset. And those assets with the highest criticality score should be priority for repair, rehabilitation, or replacement. Here's an example of a simple asset inventory, which is part of our small non-community asset management program template. So a system would list their assets, its location, which is just often on a map. So you just point to the map, estimated age, its status. So for example, in use, available, needs repair, whatever that status may be. Its condition, that 1 to 5 score or another method that's chosen to score the condition. Remaining useful life, which is just the age of the asset minus that expected asset's life. And then any future planned work and an estimated cost of that work would need to be included in the inventory. And the inventory doesn't have to look like this, but this is just a simple diagram to input all your information into to meet our requirements. The technical section of the asset management rule also requires an operation and maintenance program. First, standard operating procedures for daily operation of the water system is required. This should be in enough detail where a new operator could come in and operate the system without assistance. And the system must have maintenance schedules and supporting documentation for some of the critical infrastructure. So for any wells, pump stations, water storage tanks, that distribution system and its components. So things like hydrants and valves should also be included. We talked about criticality a little bit earlier, and the criticality of an asset should be considered when developing an operation and maintenance plan. So those assets that are most critical and have the highest probability of failure may require more resources. So the public water system can consider increased funding to repair, rehabilitate, or replace the asset, or more time allocated to ensure those critical assets continue to operate. Ultimately, understanding where your assets are in your operation and maintenance plans can help inform how much of your budget should be spent on them, their maintenance, and potentially future replacement. If this approach is used, it can help to reduce loss of service, and it helps to prioritize routine and preventative maintenance instead of that reactive and emergency maintenance. The next requirement of an asset management program is the criteria and timeline for rehabilitation and replacement. So a water system has to develop and document the criteria they would use to determine when assets need to be repaired or replaced. They will then need to create a timeline of repair and replacement of those assets using that developed criteria. To determine this, a system will want to consider the criticality of their assets, what's its current condition, and what's the consequence if it does fail, that remaining useful life, and that condition assessment of their asset. The cost and ability to raise funds for assets should be considered in the timeline as well, and this can then all be incorporated into a capital improvement plan. So once a system has developed an inventory, evaluated assets, developed that criteria for when rehabilitation or replacement should take place, a system can then include the repair or replacement of those assets into a capital improvement plan. Ohio's asset management rule requires a 3 to 5 year capital improvement plan and a 5 to 20 year capital improvement plan. The 3 to 5 year capital improvement plan should include details on the projects, estimated project costs, and how those projects will be funded. For that 3 to 5 year, we're looking for more detailed information. It should be in that planning phase. The 5 to 20 year projection is for potential future significant projects. This is not expected to be as detailed and can be much more generalized, but it allows the system to look 20 years ahead. You know, what do we see happening in the next 20 years? And then the capital improvement plan is required to be reviewed and updated annually by the water system, and it really should be adjusted based on system need as things change, as circumstances change. You know, it's not a document that's set in stone. So why have a capital improvement plan? Well, it helps to inform decision makers on what the need is, and it provides some data to support that need. It can help to ensure that utility can meet regulatory requirements. So as things such as, you know, the lead and copper rule come into play, capital improvement planning can help replace lead lines, things like that. Helps with that piece. It allows for a more proactive rather than reactive cycle of repair and replacement. It allows for consistency through changes in decision makers. This is something that kind of stays with the system and it moves forward. It helps to show or highlight needs to customers, and it's not binding, so it can be adjusted as needed to accommodate the needs of the utility or community as things change. So when developing a capital improvement plan, it's important to stay realistic and try to consider what your community will look like long term. Focus first on that 3 to 5 year, as it should be more detailed. And then the 5 to 20 year can be more generalized. Projects listed in the capital improvement plan should be justified and alternatives should be considered. And for each new asset in the capital improvement plan, the system should add, life cycle cost information to show how the asset will be maintained and eventually replaced through its life. It's also good to coordinate with other projects and plans within your community. Oftentimes street repair and utility repair can kind of occur at the same time to avoid excess construction and potentially save money. And detail the various funding options for the CIP. So include short and long-term financing options. Consider how funding may be allocated to various reserve accounts through rates and things like that. Include why the funding sources are identified and how they will best serve the capital improvement plan and your community in the future. And then one thing I didn't mention was, make sure that you discuss openly and often with decision makers, your utility staff, and the community on that capital improvement plan. What's planned for that next 3 to 5 years and what's planned for 5+ years out. And that kind of brings us to emergency preparedness and contingency planning, which is required to be included in the asset management program. Community systems are required to have contingency planning in accordance with Ohio Administrative Code 3745-85, which is our contingency planning rule. And then those non-community systems are required to create a contingency plan in accordance with certain elements of 3745-85. So if you look at our asset management program rule for non-community systems, it lays out what parts of 3745-85 apply. And then a contingency program or plan can be developed around those requirements. So the last technical portion of the role that I wanted to discuss is source water protection. As part of an asset management role, all public water systems are required to review their source water assessment annually and update it as necessary. All public water systems have a source water assessment that was conducted by Ohio EPA. So if you're not sure if you have it or you don't know where it's at, reach out to your district office and they can assist you with getting that. Outside of the assessment, there are also endorsed drinking water source water protection plans and checklists, which go over how to protect the source water and any current protections in place or potential threats. So for those public water systems with endorsed drinking water source protection plans, the asset management rule requires those to be reviewed in accordance with the plan or every 3 years. And for systems with a drinking water source protection checklist that has been accepted by Ohio EPA, the rule requires that to be reviewed every 5 years at minimum and for it to be updated as necessary. So if you have either of those, there is a requirement to update those, but it is not a requirement. So if a system doesn't have an endorsed drinking water protection plan or a checklist in place, you aren't required to develop one, but it is recommended. And Ohio EPA included source water protection within the asset management rule to really highlight, source water as a critical asset and to promote its protection. So we've gone over the managerial and technical contents of an asset management program, and the last area is the financial section. And it's really meant to identify both short and long-term financial need of the public water system. So proper financial planning helps to ensure financial health and sustainability of the public water system. And in the short term, this helps to ensure salaries, repairs, leases, contractors, debt, etc., can be paid. In the long term, it helps to ensure funding for needed capital improvements, funding to retain staff, and to ensure that the system will have adequate water supplies into the future. So what's required by rule to be included in an asset management program for that financial piece? Well, in order to demonstrate adequate financial capacity in the asset management program, water systems must include a long-term funding strategy to support their asset management program implementation, including the identification of sources and amounts of funds to finance the needed repair, rehabilitation, replacement, or expansion of assets. And this would include any debt service, payment on loans. The financial section of the asset management program must also include a copy of the latest water rate ordinance or schedule, if applicable, documentation of a triennial water rate evaluation. So every 3 years, the rule does require public water systems who charge rates to do a water rate evaluation, and documentation of all customers being billed for water usage if your system bills for water usage. And Ohio EPA may also request financial reports for the past 5 years and projections for the next 5 years. So those records need to be maintained and updated annually as part of your asset management program. For the past 5 years, a publicly owned public water system can provide the comprehensive annual financial report, which is required to be submitted to the auditor of the state by all publicly owned systems. And a non-publicly owned system can submit annual financial statements. So this would include assets, liabilities, income, expenditures, and balances of the water system. For the pro forma statement, which is that 5-year projection. Ohio EPA will ask for projected income statements, balance sheets, statement of cash flow for the water operating fund, terms or a schedule of all water debt, including all outstanding debt, any long-term anticipated debt for that next 5-year period of operation, and any existing information on any bond or credit rating, if applicable. So systems should consider any changes to revenue or expenses during this projection as well. So that really wraps up the requirements of the contents of the asset management program. And next we'll discuss some long-term implementation requirements. But before we go any further, we're going to take another quick poll. It's our second poll question. So what type of public water systems are required to have an asset management program? Community public water systems, non-transient non-community public water systems, transient non-community public water systems, both community and non-transient non-community public water systems, or all public water systems.
Okay, and I've launched the poll, so go ahead and make your selection. And it looks like a lot of you have voted. For those of you who have not, please go ahead and make your selection. I'll be closing the poll in another 5-10 seconds. Okay, I'm closing the poll and sharing the results. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Helen. So it looks like the majority of you did choose all public water systems, and that is correct. So in Ohio, with that asset management rule starting in 2018, all public water systems are required to have that written and implemented asset management program. Now, those programs are going to look very different. You know, if it's a community system, it's definitely going to be a lot more detailed and larger. Where if it's one of those, smaller, non-transient, non-community systems, it's going to be much more straightforward. But all public water systems in Ohio are required to have some form of asset management following, those minimum contents of the rule, those minimum requirements of the rule. Okay, so what are the long-term implementation requirements of asset management? So first, the asset management program must be reviewed and updated once a year at minimum, and that should be recorded in some way. You could have revised versions of your asset management program, or you could just keep track of when it was last reviewed or updated. It must be available for review upon request. So if Ohio EPA would come out and request that or request certain parts of the asset management program, those areas should be accessible and available for review. And then there is an annual metrics reporting requirement for community and non-transient non-community systems. And a transient system must record and keep records of the non-community metrics on an annual basis. So reporting metrics. So what are metrics? Metrics are just performance measures Ohio EPA has selected to help assess the health of a public water system. There are no right or wrong answers, and we compare metrics to benchmarking standards AWWA benchmarking standards and can provide recommendations based on some of the data that is reported. Systems are also encouraged to review metrics and make goals based on those benchmarking standards, and more or less try and get closer to those benchmarking standards over time. Again, metrics are required to be submitted annually for the previous calendar year by community and non-transient non-community systems, and maintained as part of a transient non-community public water systems records. These can be reported by submitting a hard copy Word document to Ohio EPA through our designated email address, or by filling out the metrics application in the Drinking Water Online portal. And reporting is currently open. We tend to open it up around March to May timeframe, and we're looking to expand that earlier into the year. And then it's open through November 15th to avoid a notice of deficiency. Once November 15th comes, Ohio EPA issues deficiency letters just stating metrics are still required to be reported by December 31st to avoid a violation. So metrics reporting is currently ongoing. So for community systems, we request data, which is listed in the right column, and calculate 6 different metrics based on the data submitted. So we're going to be asking for total public water system expenses and revenue, the number of service connections, the total number of distribution line breaks, and then the total miles or feet of that distribution system. And then we asked several things around non-revenue water. Some things might apply, some might not. Total gallons of billed water exported. So if you export water, you'd want to include that. Total gallons of billed metered consumption. Total gallons of billed unmetered consumption. And then the total gallons produced. And then we asked for some maintenance information. So the number of planned maintenance tasks on vertical or above the ground assets, and then the number of unplanned maintenance tasks, those emergency or reactionary maintenance tasks on above ground assets. Then we asked for 1 additional customer service metric. So with that data that's submitted, we calculate an operating ratio. We calculate the operating cost to produce water. We calculate breaks per the 10 miles of distribution pipe. We calculate non-revenue water as a percentage. Maintenance tasks per year on vertical assets, split between those emergency and non-emergency. And then we ask for 1 additional customer service metric, which can be picked by the public water system. We do have a drop-down on the online application that you can select from, but some examples include the number of times the system experienced a disruption of service, customer service cost per account, service affordability, or delinquency rate as a percentage, just to name a few. But it can be anything. If your system tracks some sort of customer service metric that you like to maintain, that could be submitted on that annual basis as well. And this is an annual requirement for the previous calendar year. So next is non-community metrics reporting. So for a non-community public water system, we have 5 different metrics that must be tracked and recorded for transient non-community systems and reported for non-transient non-community systems. This includes the number of instances when the water system's pressure dropped below 20 psi, which by our rule is a disruption of service, number of days unable to serve water, the number of planned repair, rehabilitation, or replacement tasks per year, the number of unplanned or emergency repair, rehabilitation, or replacement tasks per year, and the amount of reserve funds available for the public water system itself, which often is a question. So, we're asking for how much money is set aside specifically for those water system components. Because a lot of our non-community systems are businesses and things. We don't want to know anything about the business side of things, but we are asking and encouraging you to set aside some money for your most expensive asset. And that is why we're asking that question in particular. So we have discussed the minimum contents that must be included in an asset management program and the record, keeping, and reporting of annual metrics. But when will Ohio EPA look at a public water systems asset management program now that it's been in place for almost 5 years? For a new system, Ohio EPA will need to review a written asset management program prior to detailed plan approval and startup. With startup of a new system, some required items under the asset management rule may not be included. So an outline and how those will be included or incorporated into the asset management program in the future is acceptable. For existing systems, Ohio has incorporated asset management questions into the sanitary survey process. These questions are designed to identify potential deficiencies within an asset management program. So if the responses identify deficiencies, an inspector may make recommendations or require updates to an asset management program. If several items are identified, an asset management screening may be initiated. And Ohio EPA will prioritize and conduct asset management screenings on systems that enter or are under enforcement. Systems applying for loans, those now require the review of the asset management program to get the loan. Or systems with obvious capability issues, such as failure to respond to an emergency, could potentially trigger a screening. District office inspectors conduct these screenings and will review the technical and managerial section of an asset management program. And here in central office, we will review that financial information. So there is often, you often send the technical and managerial to your district office, and then they can either send the financial to us or that will come directly to us here in central office if a screening is requested. So an asset management screening it's meant more for community systems, but it can happen to a non-community system. But that's more on a case-by-case basis. And really, it just takes a more comprehensive look at an asset management program. We've developed some criteria on what is acceptable, when to provide recommendations, and what type of recommendations to provide, to really just move towards improving that asset management program and making it more usable. And through a screening, those violations or issues found within the asset management program, your system could potentially be put on a schedule due to those deficiencies to correct those deficiencies, doesn't update their asset management program. But the intention is just to make it more usable and more detailed. Okay, so before we go any further, we're going to take a quick poll. So what do you need assistance with if you're a public water system? So developing parts of an asset management program, funding assistance for capital improvements, assistance with succession planning efforts, or assistance with funding planning efforts. And you can select one or more answers here.
Okay, and I'm launching the poll, so go ahead and please make your selection or selections. Looks like a lot of people have already voted. If you have not, go ahead and please make your final selections. I'll be closing the poll shortly. Okay, and I am sharing the results. So back to you, Sean.
Looks like a pretty even spread here. So, developing parts of, I'm going to talk about some of the resources available for some of these in future slides, but it looks like we have a pretty fair spread here of different needs. And I'll cover, developing asset management, some things on some funding, and some technical assistance providers that are available for us that can help with some of those needs here in the next couple slides. So next, I just want to go over some guidance and things that are available by Ohio EPA for asset management. So we've developed some guidance for systems to use, and this includes, an asset management program template for non-community and small community systems, a written description template, which goes over what must be included in an asset management plan. We have our asset management screening questions available for systems to review, which go over the minimum information that must be included in an asset management program and what is reviewed during a screening. And we have metrics guidance, including fact sheets, how to log into the Drinking Water Online Portal, et cetera, which explain the metrics themselves and kind of how to use those and what our benchmarking standards are. I also just want to put this up here. This is our main asset management program webpage. So all the guidance documents, any new information that comes out is always posted here. There's also that link for the Drinking Water Online Portal. It's just that raindrop kind of right in the center that you can click to get into the Customer Support Center to submit metrics information. But this is our main asset management program webpage. So I highly recommend checking in on this regularly to see if there's any new information or updates. Ohio EPA also partners with 2 technical service providers to provide direct technical assistance to community systems who serve a population under 10,000. So Ohio RCAP provides various consulting services and offers a wide range of trainings throughout Ohio at no cost to the system. Starting this program year, so here in 2022-2023, Ohio EPA has also partnered with Ohio Rural Water Association to offer technical assistance and trainings to public water systems serving, less than 10,000 customers. And they can both help with a wide variety of things, and we work with them on an annual basis to kind of focus in on some certain things as well. So your district office inspector can assist you with getting in contact with either of these organizations, and they do work independently from Ohio EPA. So they can help address any concerns or compliance issues without us necessarily getting involved. And Ohio EPA has previously provided some principal forgiveness or grant-like funds for the development of asset management. And we are working to develop and open up a grant opportunity here in 2022-2023 timeframe to develop or update asset management programs. So that will be on the asset management webpage and our main drinking water funding page, but be on the lookout for that. And once that's available, we'll be sending out information to all eligible public water systems as well. But that is something to look for in the future if you know you need to make some improvements or changes to the asset management program. And we are getting into our 5-year rural review. So the last thing I want to mention is that this 5-year rural review is coming up, and Ohio EPA is planning to start some early stakeholder outreach in the coming months. So this allows anyone to submit comments on the rural language. So please consider submitting comments once Ohio EPA starts up this early stakeholder outreach process. Or feel free to send comments to me at any time, and we can consider them as part of that 5-year rural review process as well. And on the screen, there's just a few, things, be as clear as possible, describe any assumptions used, provide any technical information and or data used to support your views, explain how you arrive to your estimates for potential burdens, benefits, or costs, and provide specific examples to illustrate your views and offer alternatives. So that's the entire rule. So if you have any comments on anything in 8701 through 05, please feel free to reach out and we can look at that. And I think we're now ready for some questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sean. We'll go through a few questions submitted during today's presentation. It's a reminder you can still submit questions through the questions pane. We'll do our best to answer them. If we don't get an answer to your question, we will reach out via email after the webinar. So the first question is, what type of assistance, okay, you kind of covered some of this, so maybe this was earlier, but the assistance available to a public system for the development of an asset management program. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, if you need assistance, I would recommend reaching out to your district office inspector. Some assistance can be provided by Ohio EPA. And then at minimum, we could get you in contact with some of our technical service providers to assist with developing the asset management program, or if there's funding opportunities, kind of steer you in that direction to get some funding, to maybe work with a third-party consultant, to get equipment needed for asset management, whatever it may be. So if you do need some assistance, there is assistance available. There's templates available on our webpage. So reach out to us and we can get you some help.
Okay, how much detail needs to be included in a capital improvement plan?
Yeah, so the 3 to 5 year capital improvement plan should be detailed and include what infrastructure projects are planned and how those will be funded. That 3 to 5 year is really that period that you should be planning, talking to different agencies to potentially to get grants, working with Ohio EPA to see if you maybe would be able to be considered for any principal forgiveness. So the 3 to 5 years should be pretty detailed. It should be pretty defined on what you plan to do. You're most likely in that planning phase of a project. That 5 to 20 year can be much more general. It could be, I expect this well pump to go out in 17 years, and the expected cost is this amount. It can be very general. And then as priorities change, and as that gets closer to that 3 to 5 year, it will be pushed into that 3 to 5 year planning phase. And both of these can change fairly frequently. So it's not the static thing. So you want to prioritize and constantly looking at everything and reprioritizing what's in your capital improvement plan as things and needs change.
Okay, our next question is, how often should water rates be reviewed and updated?
So Ohio's asset management rules require a triennial water rate evaluation. So at minimum, what we want to see here at Ohio EPA per the rule is for every 3 years for those water rates to be evaluated. And then, a schedule to either increase or keep the rates the same with some supporting documentation. Why was that decision made? And they can obviously be updated more frequently or often, updated much less frequently. But at minimum, they should be evaluated on a 3-year basis, and then adjustments should be made to rates if the data suggests that it, should be made. Okay,
and one last question, which I think you kind of covered this, but maybe you can just remind us, when are asset management programs reviewed by Ohio EPA?
Yeah, well, first I want to mention, Ohio EPA is happy to look at your program at any time. If you want us to review it to see if it complies with the rule, if you want suggestions, so, feel free to reach out to your district office inspector or to me directly, and we can work on it then and review it. But the main time when a asset management program would be reviewed, or sections of it would be reviewed, would be during a sanitary survey process. We're going to ask various asset management related questions, which then may cause the inspector to look a little bit more in detail into the asset management program. Now, if there's a lot of deficiencies and things noted or some concern, or you've entered enforcement, something like that, we could potentially conduct an asset management screening. And at that time, that's really when we're going to want to see that entire asset management program and really take a closer look at it and provide some recommendations based off of what we see. So primarily, we're going to ask questions through that sanitary survey process. And then if needed, we may conduct a screening, which will have a more in-depth look into the asset management program.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to wrap it up here because we're almost at 3 o'clock. So thank you, Sean, for your great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending this 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference session. Before we end the session today, we'd like to point out another one of today's environmental fun facts. On this slide, we're highlighting the different types of public water systems. There are basically 3 types of public water systems. The community water systems serve at least on average 25 people year-round and include things like cities, mobile home parks, and nursing homes. Then non-transient, non-community systems serve at least on average 25 of the same people over a 6-month period and include schools, hospitals, and factories. And transient, non-community water systems serve at least on average 25 different people over 60 days per year and include examples like campgrounds, restaurants, and gas stations. Private water systems are regulated by the Ohio Department of Health. And you can scan the QR code on the slide to get more information about highlighting the different types of public water systems. The Ohio EPA hosts a series of webinars throughout the year on a variety of environmental topics. This slide provides information on how to register for these upcoming webinars, where to find recordings of previous webinars, and how to sign up to receive notifications of upcoming webinars through our Ohio EPA Customer Support Center. And we will put recordings of all of the conference sessions up on our YouTube channel. That may take us several weeks since we do have so many sessions, but we will also post them there. So with that, we'll end the session of Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.